Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Finance Committee meeting. This evening, my members are myself, the chair, Mr. Dean Holland, and Miss Amy May. My alternate is Mrs. Cheryl Ramos. We have one item on the agenda for this evening. It's proposed ordinance 10, 2023. It's a increase in the appropriation of the general fund, line item 101-0200-5-3402, professional services for $30,000. And the second line item is the airport capital, line item 475-7500-5-5900 for $6,000. Does any of the members of the committee have any questions about the adjustment in appropriations? Yes.
As I understood, Mr. Chairman, the professional services relates to some inter-service functions and legal circumstances.
That is correct. What this auditor and I have spoke about, that's what she said it was for.
And what's the capital improvement at the airport?
Oh, that is money that is being donated to the city for the beacon. They have to run it through somewhere, so that's the line item that she's putting the money in, passing through the donations. Any other members? Yes, Cheryl?
I just wanted to clarify, I heard right. The $30,000 for additional legal expenses?
Yeah, we still have bills coming in from last year that, we're not billed
For
right away.
legal or?
Yeah, plus what's going on this year. Yes.
So what is going on this year?
Just routine stuff this year. But there's still invoices that come in.
Any other council members' questions? Administration? Public? Do I have a motion
I
to
would
add?
make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to pass as emergency.
That's what she just asked, if we could.
Yes, please.
She said yes, please.
Okay.
She said please.
And place on tonight's agenda.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Holland to make a motion to suspend the rules this evening and pass on first reading as an emergency and add it to the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'm voting for Ms. May.
Okay,
She votes yes.
okay, and that is reason for, she's second?
She cannot speak.
Okay, that's fine.
Amen. Bang the
We will
gavel.
take a
That was
vote
out
as a
of
show of a hand this evening. We will take a show of a hand.
You can nod your head.
Mr. Holland? That is a yes. Mrs. May? That's a yes. And I will vote yes also. We will add proposed ordinance 10, 2023 to the agenda tonight and request a suspension of the rules and pass on first reading. Is there any other issues to come before the Finance Committee tonight? Hearing none? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. We adjourn at 6:49.
All right, it's now 7 PM. We're going to call the Public Works and Economics meeting to order. Members are Steve Rippeth, Councilman Steve Rippeth, Councilperson Cheryl Ramos, and myself. Alternate is Mr. Kelly Ricklick. I've had it sitting out there. We got the legislation a couple weeks ago. I wanted everybody to look at it for a while before we called the first one. And I'm not asking to come out with a vote on it yet tonight. I want us to, get that and I think once it gets into the media, it's gonna give opportunity for the public to have a say in it. So we got another meeting scheduled on the 26th. We got an hour put away so everybody can have their comments heard. What we're talking about tonight is two different pieces of legislation. Proposed 8, which has to do with the rental registration. And then we also got proposed 9, was vacant building resolution. I brought in Captain Jim Schultz, who's our fire inspector, and I also brought in Mr. Josh Mathias, our building zoning code administrator. And I was gonna get Captain Schultz to kind of tell us where we're at and why, why this is something we need or we're looking at now. This has been on a topic for council for quite some years. We talked about it and stuff, but I mean, and just before we get started with this and stuff, I'd recommend everybody on council to maybe set 15, 20 minutes to go over and schedule time with Captain Schultz and take a look at some of the pictures and some of the things that are going on. I didn't want to bring it tonight for a council meeting and make it look like I'm attacking or picking on, some people and stuff. I wanted it to be more of, us to talk about it. At least you can go see Captain Schultz and see it one-on-one and see more of the things that I saw. But Captain Schultz, if you'd like, you can go up to the podium for me. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Just to give you a little bit of a structure of how we do things and why we are strongly suggesting that we go with a rental registry. Just give you a little makeup of what we do. Right now, as an inspector, we inspect commercial and industrial buildings only. That's the only thing that we're state mandated to do. Going into residential areas is something that's very much, it's very difficult to do. It's something that's regulated more by local ordinance. We currently operate on a complaint basis. If there's a complaint from a tenant or a neighbor, we'll go do an inspection, and if we find a violation, we'll use the International Property Maintenance Code at times to take care of it. Some of the violations might not necessarily be in that code, but it's something we can use. Other times we react to complaints that are made through police and fire contact. Anytime a police officer or a firefighter goes inside one of these buildings and sees a hazard, it'll end up on my desk. And then we'll initiate a contact and we'll go in and we'll see what we can do to more or less alleviate the situation. So the why. Why are we doing this? There's been an alarming uptick in hazardous, unsafe situations in buildings that we're going into. Some of the things we're seeing are just mind-boggling that people are living in these circumstances. So what I do is I have a bulleted list of some of the things that we've kind of seen over the past few years. I do have a lot of photos. I really do not want to bring them into a public forum because a lot of this is people's privacy, and we don't want to put that out there for the public. But the things that we're currently seeing, we have first understand, a vast majority of our landlords are great landlords. Same with our tenants that are in the area. There's a lot of really good people out there that are doing a great job. But there's instances that we're running across situations that are very dangerous. And it's either due to them being uninformed, or they don't know the code, or maybe something that's not quite as nice as that. So landlord issues we're seeing, we have improper spaces that are being rented as dwelling units. We have garages that are being rented as a dwelling unit, storage sheds, maintenance closets, unimproved attics, basements, commercial buildings, units that have had a structure fire or flooding that was not cleaned up or repaired, Units do not have services to them such as water, heat, sewage, and we'll kind of cover what they use for those services inside those here in a minute. We have situations, and we've seen a big uptick on this, of severe overcrowding. We have a 1,000 square foot house with 11 to 15 people living in it that are kind of a transient population going through the area. And the hazards that are in that house are something that we've had several close calls fire-wise that we've had to deal with. We have utilities problems inside that are not maintained. Working smoke detectors in a lot of the units we go into are uncommon. We might have smoke detectors that are present, but very frequently they just don't operate. Whether the batteries are out or they're broken or not functioning for whatever reason. We give out 300 smoke detectors a year into our school system with Lowe's. We also install another 200 a year through my inspection bureau. Not only we give them out through the fire department, we'll install them for people also. That being said, with that being there, we commonly go in buildings and smoke detectors just don't work. And it's not just the ones that are inside the tenant spaces, it's those that are in common hallways that are supposed to be maintained by the landlords also. This is the number one thing that's gonna save these people's lives, and they're just not working at all. We'll get called to fires and I bet you the last 10 fires we've been on, we don't hear smoke detectors going off. And that's something that we've gotta be more aggressive to be sure that that's being taken care of. We have automatic door closures in multi-unit apartment complexes with an interior common hallway. They're supposed to have, by code, an automatic door closure. So if there's a fire in a unit and a person runs out in a panic, which that's what everybody's gonna do, the door will close behind them. And when that happens, when that door closes behind them, it holds the fire into the fire apartment so everyone else in that unit can get out. And we've had several instances where they ran in a panic, there was no automatic door closure, and the fire and superheated gases come out into the hallway and more or less makes that hallway unusable. And when that happens, you end up with people trapped in apartments. That's something we run into pretty common too. We gotta be sure that that's being corrected. Very frequently, we don't have required fire extinguishers. We had one instance where we had a furnace and a hot water tank that was red tagged for 4 years. So we have a unit where it's a house, there's a furnace, there's a red tag, it's been non-operational for 4 years, and we have 7 space heaters that are spread out through the house to heat the house, and they're all on extension cords. One of the heaters was a kerosene heater, and it was on top of a piece of plywood, and I asked the tenant why it was on a plywood. They didn't want to burn the floor. So they figured plywood would be helpful to prevent the floor from burning. And they had a 2-gallon can of kerosene just feet away, just so they can refill as needed. We had a fire at that apartment. The fire was caused by overloaded wiring in the wall from all the space heaters. They had a fuse box with 15 amp fuses in it that it obviously kept popping the fuses, so they put 30 amp fuses in. And the 30 amp fuses eventually caused an overload, and they had a fire in the middle of the day. Luckily, everybody was awake, so they got out safely. Again, no smoke detectors were present, no smoke detectors were going off. Leaking pipes, this is very common. We have renters that are advised to shut off the water main downstairs, and then whenever you need water, just go downstairs and turn the water main back on, use the water, so you're limiting the leaking, and then when you're done, run downstairs and shut the water main off. And they've been having leaking water for many, many months, sometimes years. A lot of these landlords are not from this area. And it comes to me pretty frequently, and I have to give the landlord a call and more or less tell them they're gonna fix it now, or else we're gonna issue them a notice of violation, and frequently we get it fixed. So we have those instances. We have renters that are relying on strictly bottled water for very prolonged periods of times, many, many months till we get involved, for anything from flushing their toilets. They're having to get pailed water, dump it in the tank, flush the toilet. We have sewage that's backed up in the garages, backed up in the basements. We have instances where the tenants have been told, just don't use your water, and it won't back up anymore. So the situation has been there for many weeks till we get involved and get the situation corrected. We had many instances of tenants having to use stoves to heat houses. Frequently, that has been caused by a tenant issue. I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, where we've had hoarding situations to where baseboard heaters are being blocked by garbage and storage stuff, and they're not functional. We have a lot of instances of severe cockroach and bedbug infestations. We have cockroach, bed bugs, mice, rats, you name it, they infest. And what happens in a lot of these safety issues and a lot of these pest issues is that the problem the tenant is having because of how they live is turning into their neighbors' problems. And their neighbors are putting in harm's way. They're having to deal with the vermin and stuff like that. So this is something we got to be sure that we're taking care of. Again, water and sewers being unusable in some units, and we've had some instances where it's not even provided, where they're living in a storage shed, maintenance closet, they've been living in garages, and they have buckets they go to bathroom in. And then we've had complaints from our city workers with the sanitation departments that the human waste is being put into the trash, and they have to go and take the trash, and are running into human waste. So that has been happening also. Again, this is something that we have to stop and address. We had one instance of 80 5-gallon buckets of waste that was inside of a structure that had to be managed. It was not going out in the trash. It was just being kept in buckets. We have dilapidated structures with holes in the floors, holes in the roofs, plaster, drywall, ceiling heavily damaged, many cases of it falling in. We had one house where a whole section of floor was missing, and the only thing that was holding up the contents of the room was carpet that was stretched to the outer baseboards and was taut, and the carpet was almost like a trampoline. When you'd step on it, the floor was just not falling down, it was gone. And the termites had eaten it out, and the tenants were still living there. And it was no sign in sight that this was gonna be corrected. So steps are weak, missing, exterior walls unstable. Some of these houses, we went up to exterior walls and just pushed, and the house just kind of has rocked in some of these houses, and yet they're being rented out. Severe dilapidated wiring. We've had several instances of houses that were improperly converted from a single-family house to a duplex. We had one where it was a second-story duplex that they decided to make it an upstairs duplex by cutting off the stairs, by blocking it off, and then they put stairs on the back that went up to the first floor porch roof, and then the first floor porch roof ended up being the second story's porch. The only thing is they didn't take care of the pitch, and you're still standing on a pitched roof to go up to a door and go into a house. That was a call that we were on also, and that's currently being used. Now, what has happened in many of these situations is if somebody has a problem, they lodge a complaint with us. We've seen many instances where we go manage the complaint, and they are legitimate complaints, and we found out days later that the tenant was immediately evicted. And these tenants know this, so a lot of them aren't complaining because they don't want to get evicted because they're afraid they're not going to get another apartment. So we want to get a system that is not reactive. It's something that we go out annually and we inspect and make sure that they are getting proper housing to live in that's safe, and we're not seeing the problems we're currently running into. Now, the problems I just said are landlord problems. There's also tenant problems, and there's a lot of tenants that are causing issues that are dangerous not only to themselves but their neighbors. And the landlords sometimes are powerless to stop a lot of these situations. In working with them, we can either educate the tenants or we can hold them accountable to be sure that these situations are being managed. We've had extreme hoarding that's caused pests such as cockroaches, bed bugs, rats, mice. They've infested their house and went either up or down or sideways to their neighbors' houses, and they've had to deal with the same pests. We've had extreme hoarding, cover baseboards, force air heating. When that happens, the heating's no longer effective. And then we've seen on a few occasions, they just turn their stove on and heat the house with a stove. And you can see how dangerous that's going to be. We have properties that are heavily damaged by the tenants, creating unsafe entry for the safety forces. We've went in there and they've breached walls from just destructive behavior. And once you open up a wall, it allows fire to quickly move through a building that's not planned for, and it causes early flashover and early collapse. The system, this system that we have, it protects it'll protect the landlords also. It'll protect the neighbors also from some of the tenants that are causing damage to structures by just having an accountability by going in once a year and being sure that the units maintain in a sanitary manner, so we're not creating a situation that's dangerous to the neighbors. We also have several electrical problems with extension cords, severe outlet overloading, and we've had a couple instances of signs of prior fires that have happened inside the units that were not reported to us and not reported to the landlord. We had a stove that was drug into a garage that was on fire and damage that was inside the house that clearly had happened, and the landlord was never told anything about it, and it was obvious the tenant did something on the stove and they just drug it out in the garage and just let it be because they got it out themselves. So this is something that we can also tell what's going on for the landlord. So with that being said, I'm hoping you strongly consider this legislation just so we can better serve the city of New Philadelphia.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Captain Schultz. Committee members, do you have questions?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
do. Okay, so of course I'm all for this. I've been pushing for something for years. But one of my questions is, and you mentioned the yearly inspections to protect the tenants and the landlords. Would those be, I know that tenants, they have rights,
Yes.
and actually it would be illegal for them to be evicted because they told on something in their unit. That's against the law. But anyways, so the inspections, would those be unannounced as much as possible?
No, they would have to be scheduled. You can't go in unannounced to anybody's apartment. We would coordinate a schedule with the landlords, and we would schedule a time to go into the apartments and check them out. As far as what type of inspection be in the apartment, it's going to be pretty minimal. It's not going through any of their stuff. It's going kind of in a common pathway in and kind of glancing around to see if we see any major hazards, be sure the smoke detectors work and stuff like that.
The reason why I asked if it was gonna be as unannounced as much as possible, so you can get a picture of what it really is.
Yeah, but we also got to realize they have rights too, and we want to do the best we can. And realistically, if they know that we're scheduled that we're going to come in, they're going to clean the place up, which that is the end result that we want. We want the place cleaned up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rivers, you have any questions?
No, I think he did a very nice job. I've seen some of those places, so
I'm
I
sure.
know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Anybody else on council? Any questions, or Mr. Hall?
Have we issued citations for violations?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Have we issued citations for violations?
Yes, through the International Property Maintenance Code we have. Right now, the fire code for these types of situations has very limited power. The fire code makes it to where we can secure the building, remove ignition sources, and remove combustibles. After that, the fire code then just tells myself to transfer the case over to the Building and Zoning Department. And from there, we kind of lose our power. Again, this is just a reactive system, though, and we want to be sure that we're getting proactive and getting ahead of it.
Have you had any cases come to court?
On rentals, not to court, we had one come to appeals in this chambers. We had one come to appeals and we got a positive result from it. The building ended up getting tore down, I believe in 30 days, Mr. Fate.
I just wanted to piggyback on your question, Dean. Once our team gets in there and can inspect it, that unit's gonna be subject to the International Property Maintenance Code, the fire code, as well as the building and housing code and our health code. So once they're in there, it's subject to all those things. And citations can be issued on the basis of any of those.
Yes, sir.
How many
rental units do you have here in New Philadelphia?
That's a great question, and this is how we're gonna figure that out. There's been, estimates, I've heard of 3,000 to 5,000. I'm leaning toward the 3,000 mark. I know on the commercial and industrial side, I do about close to 1,000 inspections a year. It keeps me pretty busy. 3,000 inspections a year is gonna be, now granted, those inspections are gonna be very minimal compared to what I do, but it's gonna be a handful to
Still a
handle.
big job, I mean,
Yes.
And kind of going from that point, with all the inspections that we'll have to do, we'll probably, that's where that $20 fee comes in, is being able to pay per position that's gonna handle, most of this,
Help handling.
yeah.
Well, I've heard it said, okay, even in these chambers, that of the properties, residential,
Mhm.
50% are rentals.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and how many properties do we have in New Philadelphia? Does anybody know a number? Because
I would say 5,500 maybe at the most.
5,500
Don't you have
properties.
don't you have about 8,300 accounts?
Yeah.
But that,
Yeah, I
You
mean,
got
but
mul-
he's got
you
that
still have mul-
commercial,
That could be
You still have
commercial.
he's got some of that commercial,
Yeah.
and some of them are double.
Yeah, we were going based on water meters before, weren't we?
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could be looking at 2,500 to 3,000.
And some of those meters are billed multiple. You may have a
Yes.
meter times 3, because it only has 1 meter, and it's a triplex.
Yeah.
I mean, the water office could definitely help you with rentals, because water bills are not permitted to be put in tenants' names, they have to be in landlords' names. So,
I've heard that 50% also, most of about it, right?
Yeah, so any numbers we come up with is really just kind of making educated guesses, and this is where we're gonna have to.
No, I think you're right, Jimmy,
figure
you're
it
at
out.
that 3,000, I bet you're real close to
Yeah.
what you would have rental wise, I'm guessing. Sorry.
Any other questions for Captain Schultz or Mr. Matthias?
But this is just a beginning, I mean,
Yeah,
we're
we're-
just exploring.
Like I said, this meeting here was just to kind of get this information out, get it to the media, get to the public that what we're looking at and stuff, so that way if we have any constituents that want to speak out on it and stuff, I already have an hour put away for the next meeting, so we can have a lot more time to talk about it and give everybody a chance to speak on it. Like I said, this isn't something brand new, I mean, this is something, thanks to our law director and Captain Schultz and Mr. Matthias for finally bringing it to the head. We really have something to sink our teeth into, but it's a big issue. I think it's something, we should look at and definitely get public feedback on it, and before we make any rash.
This is
decisions
something
on
that
it, so.
we've developed through our International Property Maintenance Code and through our Property Review Committee. So it's something we put a lot of thought to,
Yeah.
and it's been, the law director typed it up after we've really hashed it out pretty
Right.
heavily. So it's been a lot of thoughts been put into it.
And in my personal thought, I thought the $20 was really fair. From the research I've done in a lot of different communities, almost like it seems like a money grab on some of this. This looks like it pretty much would be just enough to cover that position, to make the administrative cost of it, I think. To make this at least, maybe break even. Not necessarily, it's not a money grab, I don't think.
Does Josh have anything extra to add?
Josh, you have any comments on this, or anything you want to add for?
Just a couple, I won't go into detail, like Captain Schultz, talk about all the things that we see. For those of you who don't know, I'm Joshua Matthias, I handle code enforcement for the city, so we work together on these a lot. I just wanna kinda touch on real quick the reason that we're bringing it to the table. And it's not that the city wants to micromanage how property owners handle their properties. It's basically to get a minimum standard of living for the citizens in our town with, to live in sanitary and safe places. These inspections, the way we've been talking, aren't going to be 45-minute inspections of each rental unit. They're going to be looking for safety hazards and making sure the place is sanitary. We're not trying to make everybody have a white picket fence and all that kind of stuff. The places we have seen, I will say that's needed. The Property Review Committee that Captain Schultz brought up is where this thing was kind of born, I guess you could say. The safety forces brought it to that committee and wanted to know if there's something we could do. There are a lot of other cities in our area, and surrounding counties that do this, so it's not like we're starting this out of nowhere. I've been up to the city of North Canton and asked them a lot of questions on how theirs is going. So far, it's been successful. I think if this gets voted in and we do it after a few years, it'll get easier, and there'll be a lot of happy landlords and tenants in the city, because it's needed. I'll just leave it with that, and then we'll have more information at the next meeting, like you said. So,
Thank you, Josh.
yep.
Any questions for Josh or anything? All right, anything else to come before committee tonight? This gives us a lot to think about, and like I said, I highly recommend penciling 15 minutes, 20 minutes to go see Captain Schultz and just look at those pictures, look at some of the things he was talking about, because it was definitely eye-opening to me. I mean, I knew we've had some issues and stuff, but really, it's really something else. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Holland.
an observation. I would disagree with you on the amount of the annual fee. When we begin to look at not only the salary of this employee who is going to be the oversight position, benefits, the amount of mails, time spent with the courts, it's incomprehensible to me that we would set a fee this low. And I'm not thinking at all about a money-grabbing situation, as you suggested. I'm saying that to at least recover the costs, this is something that should not be covered on a citywide basis. The city as a whole did not create this circumstance. The citizens did not create this circumstance. And it's incomprehensible to me to recognize that this exists in the city of New Philadelphia. If we were talking about Chicago or Baltimore or cities who are known for these circumstances, it would be entirely different. I would staunchly support any effort to improve the safety for our citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Anybody else have any comments or anything else to come before committee? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Would move that we adjourn?
Thank you, Mr. Rippeth, at 7:27.
Everybody ready?
I'm not sure Larry is. Okay. First 5 minutes out.
This meeting of New Philadelphia City Council will now come to order. Would you please rise and remain standing for the invocation and pledge of allegiance? Invocation by Mr. Holland tonight.
Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for bringing us together tonight to do the business of the city. Father, we thank you that we have important business to take care of. The safety of our city, the safety of the citizens in our community. And Father, we ask for your guidance in the decisions that we make. And we pray, Father, that it would bring honor and glory to you in those decisions. Father, we thank you so for the beautiful days that you've provided for us. And we thank you for the opportunity to serve in this community. We thank you for those employees that serve the community and provide the various services that are required. We thank you, dear God, for this night. Watch over and guide us. And we pray these things, Father, in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, and welcome everybody here to our June 12th City Council meeting, and welcome all those that are watching by live streaming. Roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Present.
Mr. Lonzer.
Here?
Mrs. May.
Present.
Mr. Pace. Mrs. Ramos.
Here.
Mr. Ricklick.
Present.
Mr. Rippett.
Present.
Let it be known that Mr. Pace is excused from the council meeting tonight. All right, everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda. Is there any additions or corrections, or mostly additions to the agenda? Mr. Rick?
Mr. President, I'd like to add proposed ordinance 10, 2023 to the agenda this evening.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holland. Any discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May. Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Rippett.
Yes.
All right, ordinance 1023 has been added to the agenda. I would accept a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of ordinance 10, 2023.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, need a second? Mr. Ramos,
second.
thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May. Mr. Rippett.
Yes.
All right, agenda has been approved for this evening. Minutes, everybody's had a chance to review the minutes from our last council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, accept a motion to accept the minutes. Mrs. Ramos, thank
So
you.
moved.
Need a second? Mr. Rippett, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Rippett.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May. Mr. Ricklick.
Abstain.
All right, this has been approved. Correspondence, Ms. Courtwright.
To Council Clerk from Treasurer Gerber dated May 30th, 2023. This is the City of New Philadelphia Investment and Savings Report. To Council and Administration from Executive Administrative Assistant to the Mayor Jamie Bailey dated May 31st, 2023. The Mayor's Month-End Report. To Council and Administration from Administrative Assistant to the Auditor Heather Denham dated June 2nd, 2023. This is an email with the attachments, the statement of cash position with month-to-date totals, and the expense report with encumbrance details for May of 2023. To Council and Administration from Mayor Day dated May 7th, 2023. This is a forwarded email titled Zoning Revisions Update and Work Session with Wendy Moeller of Compass Point Planning. To Councilman Ricklick from President Kemp, this is dated June 7th, 2023. This is a forwarded email from Auditor Gundy titled Supplemental Appropriations. President Kemp asked Mr. Ricklick to take this issue into his committee. To Council and Administration from Mayor Day dated June 8th, 2023. This is an email titled New Traffic Box Wraps, and this email was replied to by Councilwoman Ramos. To Council and Administration from Mayor Day dated June 9th, 2023. This is an email titled Omni Fiber Presentation at Monday's City Council meeting, and to council and administration from Jonalee Fournette with the Service Director's Office dated June 12th, 2023. This is an email titled Dominion Pipeline Replacement. That concludes correspondence for this evening, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cartwright. We'll move on to our administrative reports. First up, Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have some presentations to make at the end of my mayor's report, so I'll go here to the podium. Oh, you can stay there, that's fine. A couple things I want to touch on before we make the presentations. Tomorrow, the steering committee working to develop an economic strategy for the downtown area will reconvene to review the results of its public survey and recent mind mapping or brainstorming session. Aegeus 360, a marketing firm from Akron, is assisting the committee in creating a strategy and a new organization to implement it. The end goal is to build a public-private partnership that will direct and sustain economic growth in the city, particularly in the center of town. Now, as this process moves along, we'll have representatives from Aegeus 360 and maybe from the steering committee come here to council, share the results of their work, because down the road there's going to be legislation necessary in order to create this public-private partnership for this effort. City's using some of the funds appropriated for the downtown improvements budget to purchase new music and sound system for the downtown quadrants. Some of the original equipment has reached its end life and is no longer compatible with new audio technology. Hitchcock Sound has designed and will install the system, which we hope will be up and running in time for the first Town Days Festival Grand Parade on June 30th. And if you've been wondering what's being built beside the pickleball courts at Tuscarora Park, it's an enclosed viewing area and a storage facility. There will be 3 tiers of seating in that viewing area. And I want to thank the O'Donnell Foundation for its funding of the project and its continued effort to promote the sport of pickleball in New Philadelphia. Now I'd like to call Kyle Doran, Ray Morrow, and Brody Barbie to the podium. Gentlemen. I'm going to present them with letters of commendation. Our sanitation department workers are among the most visible city employees to the public, and they have one of our toughest jobs. It's physically demanding and must be done in all sorts of weather. These men have earned the special recognition because they exemplify what it means to be a public servant. Their letters of commendation read in part, on Friday, May 19th, 2023, Kyle Doran, Ray Morrow, and Brody Barbie were working in their sanitation route when they noticed that a resident on 3rd Street Southwest was having some difficulty in getting a sizable amount of yard waste to the curb in time for the truck. They proceeded to stop the truck, and all 3 employees helped the gentleman, who just happened to be former Mayor Greg Erb, carry the remainder of the trash and load it onto the truck. When he thanked them for their help, Mr. Erb was told, quote, "We don't mind, you matter." And that's the kind of attitude that we have among our city employees in serving the public and serving the people who really pay their way. So, gentlemen, I'd like to present you with these letters of commendation for what you did. Ray? And Brody? And Kyle. Congratulations, thank you very much. It means a lot to our constituents, but also to everybody in this room. Just how, you did that for not only Mayor Erb, but you do that for anybody, and we greatly appreciate that. Photo op?
Oh, I actually already got one.
Oh, you
but-
already got one?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome to
Thank you,
stay.
sir.
fellas.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate everything you guys do. So,
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Okay, President Kemp, I'd like to yield the remainder of, first of all, are there any questions on what I've reported on so far?
no.
Okay. I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Brian McAfee, is the Director of Business Development for Omni Fiber. The company has begun a construction project to bring yet another choice for broadband internet service to New Philadelphia. So Brian, if you would.
Thank you, Mayor Day. Mr. President, City Council members, and other team members that are here joining today, thank you for giving me a chance to just share a few highlights of what we're planning to do in your community. You know, over the last 4 years, we've all become more cognizant of the importance of a quality high-speed internet connection at our homes or businesses, because we've had to do school work from home, we've had to do work from home, we've had to do more things where we're having to give information back out, and that's what our company does. And what we're going to do is we're going to invest about $9.5 million in private funding. This does not rely on any state, local, or federal funding whatsoever, and invest in an economic development standpoint to improve the options that your residents and businesses have for broadband service. We are Ohio-based, out of Mason, Ohio, and our call center is Ohio-based as well in Milford, Ohio. So once we're up and running, like we just completed all of Dover's build, I'm very happy to say that last week we completed everything. They're all active, and now we're just doing the last few tweaks of cleanup and making sure that everything is back to the way it was before we started, and we're getting ready to expand into your community. So Mason, Ohio, we started in 2022, just February of this past year, but don't let the early start be of concern. All of us in our organization have been in this industry more than 25 years. I myself, 33 years this year in telecommunications. And specifically, I've been working in building fiber networks into communities for the last 15 years from all over the US. Our company is a spin-off from a larger company that is looking to work with communities your size that miss out on opportunities for federal funding. There's a lot of federal funding out there right now, but you're the hole in the donut. You don't get to qualify for any of that funding because you already have a broadband service provider, an incumbent cable operator in place that meets the minimum qualifications according to that funding guideline. So there's not an opportunity for you to be able to take advantage of additional funds. So companies like Omni Fiber, we come to the table to be able to give you that benefit of having a fiber optic network without having to worry about where that funding is coming from. What is fiber internet? Well, you already have internet options by telephone or by your cable system or some other method. Maybe even another provider is offering some fiber in your community. But having fiber gives you a product or a solution that comes to the house that provides you greater reliability. Our network is a passive optical network. You won't see pedestals in neighborhoods with our network. Everything doesn't require electricity. There'll be one active cabinet in your community that we will build, just like we did in Dover, and that's all the electricity that's needed is that one location, because it's through the speed of light over glass. So there's no metal that you have to worry about from a rust or atmospheric issue. Most of the things we can do are going to go along the utility poles, so we work in hand with AEP to be able to attach to those poles. And where we need to go underground, we're working with your departments, such as Josh Mathias, to be able to get those permits in place to do the underground work that we need. So you've got greater reliability. You've got faster speeds, symmetrical. That means that the speed that I get coming into my house is the same speed that I have going out. And in most cases, you don't have that today. I'll give you a scenario. If we have a Spectrum service at our home and we're getting 400 megabits per second, we're only getting about 20 megabits per second going back out. Now that doesn't mean a lot for most consumers, but what it does mean is if I'm working from home, I can't send the data I need to back to my work environment as quickly, especially in this day and age where we've used more and more video calls. So symmetrical speed is what fiber gives you. And then the unmatched reliability, because there is no electric current flowing through it, and fiber isn't metal, that means you don't have the downtime as frequently as you would with any sort of other delivery system. But what about us? What makes us different? Well, we don't offer any contracts. We don't require anybody to commit to anything for a period of time. Come and go as you please. We'd love to have you as a long-term customer, absolutely. But we're not gonna hold your feet to the fire and say you're locked in. There's no hidden fees. We've been in this industry long enough to know that one of the biggest pain points, and you probably can see this from city bills as well, is that people always call and say, what are all these line items on my bill? Our price is set for one flat fee. You don't see a bunch of different line items. Yes, there are items you can add on, but it's not like you're gonna see some fee here or some fee there. It's one set price. Our pricing is very competitive compared to what your other providers give you. Plus, you're getting greater speeds, so better pricing and better value for your money. We don't charge an installation fee, so there's no installation fee to get hooked up, and we don't put a data cap on anything. We want you to consume as much as you want to. As we all adopt more and more things into our home that are digital oriented or Internet of Things type devices, thermostats, light bulbs, all sorts of appliances, it's not hard to imagine that most of us, if we really think about the items that we have in our home, we have a minimum of 5 or 6 items that require the internet or are dependent upon the internet in our home. Be it your cell phone, be it your TV, if it's a smart TV, or some other things. I'll be honest, my home has 60 devices because of all the light bulbs. You remember the old commercial, the clapper? Well, that would be me, except mine is, hey Alexa. So you'll see that as people trend toward more and more smart home devices in the home, bandwidth is extremely important. We also include Wi-Fi with our pricing, so there's no need for anybody to have to rent or buy a router on their own. Ours is already included, and one of the things we offer is we offer the opportunity for you to have mesh Wi-Fi throughout the house, so no matter whether your home is 800 or 900 square feet, or if you've got a 10,000 square foot home, we want to make sure, our technicians go through to make sure you have the same level of signal throughout the whole house, upstairs, downstairs, everywhere. As I already mentioned, local customer service, when you call in, you're going to get somebody here in the state of Ohio, because we're in Milford. And then we also try to make sure that we offer special discounts for those that serve the community. Firefighters, police officers, teachers, those type of individuals we believe are very valuable to the community, therefore they should take advantage of that. We do participate also in the Affordable Connectivity Program, so those that also in the community that maybe don't meet economic thresholds for all things, they also can go online and get qualified to get a discount on their internet. So what are we looking at timeline? We've already started the permitting process for the first 3 areas that we're going to build, and more of those permitting areas will be done. Each permitting area is around 300 homes. We anticipate that for your community, if I'm not mistaken, we're probably going to have about 22 different locations that we will have that we call fiber distribution hubs. Those will be the only devices that you see above ground. They're about 30 inches high, 16 inches wide, by about 16 inches deep. And those are where we then spread out to serve those 300 or 400 homes. It doesn't require any electricity, so it's not going to be like that electric box that you see outside. And you certainly won't see the green pedestals that you might see with telephone service or with cable service. None of those. When we get to where we're working in a cluster of homes, everything we have is below ground. It will look like an irrigation head. We call it a flower pot, and I'll show you a picture of that in a moment. We anticipate we should start with at least the underground work next month in July. We are at the mercy of AEP when it comes to pole utility for attachments. So those permits are already in place. We'll just be waiting on AEP to give us the go-ahead and approval for when we can start the pole attachments. So underground will start first. That we typically are able to do about 1,000 to 5,000 feet a week. Then we are able to do the pole attachments at a much faster rate. So once we get to where we're starting the pole attachments, you'll see those crews move through very fast. We anticipate that we should be finished with this entire project so that all the community is lit up with fiber by the January timeframe. So what do we look like out in the community? I don't know if any of you have already seen the white trucks with the purple logos on them that say OmniFiber. I certainly know that I saw one at the hotel that I'm staying at that was parked outside, so I know they're in the area. But you know, we already are doing some areas that we've built just across the river that are Dover. We'll be identifying utilities, so lots and lots of communication will occur. Once we get this process in place, we will start sending the areas, the affected areas, mailers and various different methods of communication, social media, etc., so that they know, hey, construction's starting and this is what we look like. This is who we are, OmniFiber. And how do you contact us if you have a question? We'll identify utilities. We'll be doing aerial construction, buried construction. We utilize conduit when we go underground for fiber distribution vaults are used. And then the biggest part of what we do and we believe in is restoration of what we do. If we have to go in the ground, we're going to make sure that once we've finished and we cover it back up, it's better than when we left it. We have available all sorts of ways to get in touch with us. Obviously via our web space at omnifiber.com. We also have construction feedback forums online that when residents have a question, because what we need to know is if you have an invisible fence, if you have a gate, those type things. We want people to interact with us to let us know so that we can ensure that our technicians do the right thing at their property. And then also you have easy access to our executive team, and even Mayor Day has access straight to me because I also handle all the government affairs stuff. Again, online you'll be able to see everyone, and I believe you may have a copy of this deck as well. Anyone that has a question, please feel free to reach out. I'll open it up now to any questions you might have. I just will say that I'm very, very happy that we can move into your community and bring you an option for service.
Anyone have any questions?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Holland.
I would point out to you, if you're seeking office space, warehousing space, we have a large mall with a lot of space in it that's available, and being the county seat, we need you here.
Thank you, sir. We'll take a look at that as we have been deploying. So to give you an idea of communities we've already deployed in earlier this year, or actually toward the end of last year, we started in Shelby, Ohio. Shelby, Ohio is 100% built. Clyde, Ohio is 100% built. Green Springs, we are building right now in Fremont and Tiffin, Ohio. Dover, Ohio is 100%. So we are continually expanding. You guys are on our list for we start next. We're building in Huron as well. So we've got about 50 communities in the state of Ohio that we've identified to build by the end of 2024.
You need office space.
We will. Yes. Yes.
Any other questions?
Mr. President, I just wanted to make a point that I asked Mr. McAfee to come and speak to council so that everybody is aware that there's going to be fiber construction going on in town. And also because of the problems we've had in the past with fiber construction in New Philadelphia. So, you know, I just want to make sure that residents and council know that this is going to be taking place over the next several months.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, sir.
All right, any other questions for the mayor? If not, we'll move on to Service Director, Mr. McAbeer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. We'll start with a Glen Drive update. As reported in the past, we was waiting on the precasts, manholes. They showed up today. So, talked with them, engineer today, and they will be going gun-ho now. So, they said today that the weather don't look good tomorrow, but if it is good, they will be there and committed to still following that same timeline they had, if we remember, early August. So they're up against it. A lot of work there to do, but I'll update here in 2 weeks as far as needed. So also, we bid out our Route 250 again, June 5th. If we remember the first time, we had no bids. Luckily enough, we did receive one from Tucson incorporated out of New Philly, in the amount of $303,740, which was roughly 6% above the engineer's estimate of $289,293. We'll have a board of control meeting on Wednesday, award to those folks, and once they have a schedule, I'll make sure that I let everybody know that schedule for that Route 250 waterline project. Also, the paperwork that John and Lee had set out to everybody, I wanted to go over that a little bit, and I had sent it out to the media also. If you look at it, we have two big ones going on. They both started today. If you look at, let's say project 2851 there, you've got Front Street Southwest to Front Street Southeast from 5th to 4th Street Southeast. If you look at, I think the big thing to take away there is, for the first gas line project they're doing, if you look down at the end there with the 103 move-outs on that project, what they're doing is they're taking them out of the home now, getting them outside where they're supposed to be. So I'm just putting that out there so that you get someone calls and says, hey, am I supposed to let them in because they're moving it? Yes. There'll be 103 in that project, and I believe 89 in the other project. So the route's there, self-explanatory of what they're doing, new gas line. Again, if you look at the Mush Rush one, almost 14,000 or 13,000 feet, and the other one's about 9,000 feet. Each one of those has the foreman's name on it, so if anybody would have a problem, feel free to give that name out and number out and make contact. Just make sure that you remember which is which, because again, usually we just have Mush Rush. This is the first time we've had R&R, but Dominion's getting aggressive, so they put out the R&R because Mush Rush did have all of Philly sewed up before. But again, if you look at that, R&R will be doing the project over by East School and that. But again, it's all there, and by all means, if there's any issues, it's all right here and everything that they're doing. All the pipe they are taking out is all bare metal. They're all putting back in plastic. 4, 6, or 8 inch plastic is going back in. So again, any questions by any means, just make sure you give them those contact info. And again, the move out's the big thing because they haven't did it. They're getting aggressive about it now. And so I just wanted everybody to be aware of the fact that, Marvin just said something to me today, that they called him on his move out, and he's like, wait, so that's what you're gonna get. Am I supposed to let these guys in? But you are, and and there'll be other areas that aren't in this project that you're gonna hear about move outs. So just let folks know about that also.
All right. Any questions? Mr. Alonso?
Mr. Service Director, a lot of these are in my ward, so, like when we get to the projects done and replacing the sidewalks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you're saying just to contact them directly myself?
Yep, I would. And now, if you have an issue though, by all means, get with me because actually with Joe Armstrong, which is the Dominion fellow now that took over.
Right. Yeah, usually it's not a big deal, but
No, it's not.
There's instances where there's something.
And if you look at the schedule, they want to be, the rehab stuff or final stuff is in November. So remember that they're all probably gonna have to come back in the spring and reseed.
Yeah.
But they want to they want to have all the concrete stuff done and only have to come back and reseed or do some little bitty maintenance work, maybe in the spring of '24.
Yes. Mr. Ricker?
Mr. McAleer, will the gentlemen working in the residence, would they be identified with a photo ID?
Yes,
and
they do I forget what the name is. They've got a certain name that they go under for it's identification. They got a Q name that's cute that they all have a meeting on it. Yes,
Okay.
they all have lanterns.
Yeah, just so the
And
citizens
some
know
of them are
when
gonna
they
be,
come.
some of them for the light ups are gonna actually be Dominion folks. They're still trying to work through that, but all their folks on each line are okay to do either or.
Okay,
But Dominion is gonna try to come in and help with some of that because of the large amounts.
just to help the citizens, especially
Right,
the elderly.
sure.
If somebody's coming, they'll at least have a photo ID that they
Right.
can identify that
Right,
person.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yo, you're welcome.
Mrs. Gundy?
What is the move out you're talking about?
The meters are in their homes. My meter's outside the house. They're gonna get them outside the house, no more inside the house in the gas meters. And that's a key thing because, again, they haven't did it, now they're pushing hard on it. So again, the 103 and the 189 and the other, so they're gonna be knocking on doors and making, well, like you say, you're gonna get the biggest part of it, Dan. Because biggest part of that is all,
In my ward.
yeah, yeah. But
I
just.
walk my dog there, so we'll see.
I want mine out there too. Yeah, so.
There's no cost to it.
Any other questions for Mr. McAbeer? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to the Safety Director, Mr. Popham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. Just to follow up within the police department with the civil service exam and the final results. Officer Wayne Clark was promoted from officer up to sergeant. Sergeant Dave Morris was promoted to captain, and Captain Tessa Pahovi will become New Philly's first female chief. And that'll all take place, the swearing-in is the 28th of the month, and actually takes effect then on July 7th, when Chief Goodwin retires. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Popham? All right. Try to get an email out. I mean, I like to attend that, but I forget sometimes if I can get a reminder.
Mr. President, it'll
Yes.
be at 2:30 on the 28th. You're all invited, and it'll be here in council chambers.
Right. Right, thank you.
June 28th.
June
Yes,
28th.
June 28th.
All right, move on to the auditor's report, Mrs. Gundy.
Thank you, I have no report this
All
evening.
right. Treasurer report, Mr. Gerber.
I just want to let council know that each month I submit a report to the clerk of council, and it's the investment and savings report. And if any of you want an individual report, I can supply you with that also. Okay?
All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Gerber. All right, law director, Mr. Fate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll keep mine brief in light of everything else that's been addressed tonight. I strongly back what Josh and Captain Schultz are doing. This has been something that we've worked on for a very long time. I didn't copy from any one place when I did the legislation. I looked at probably 20 or 30 places around the state and what they were doing. And I think this is a good fit for our community. In addition to that, a large part of my time last week was dealt with doing some legal opinions and work for the Civil Service Commission for the City of New Philadelphia. I won't bore you with the details. If you have any questions or you want to read those opinions, I'd be happy to forward them to you.
All right, any questions for Mr. Fate? All right, thank you. All right, we move on to our board commission report. Planning Commission, Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Planning Commission will meet here in council chambers tomorrow at 1 p.m. And the members will be reviewing the two presentations that Wendy Mueller has made regarding our zoning and planning codes.
All right. Board of Zoning Appeals, Mr. McAbeer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board of Zoning Appeals will meet here in council chambers tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. with two variance requests to be heard.
All right. Airport Commission, Mr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Airport Commission will be meeting tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Yeah. Of course, part of your commission, I know last week you had the new beacon or the old refurbished beacon. If everybody hasn't been out there yet, to go out on East High, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's something to see. It's
something to see, right? I mean, it's,
a lot of work done from the kids at Buckeye. And did a lot of good job.
yeah,
Good
really,
work on that.
really nice, so. All right, Mitch is not here, we'll move on to Health Board, Mr. Holland.
Go ahead.
Gonna make Ron
Yes,
do another
sir.
report.
We met, oh, wait, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Health Board will meet this coming Wednesday, June 14th, here in council chambers at 12 o'clock.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holland. All right, move on to Council Committee reports. Finance, Mr. Rookley.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met this evening at 6:45 PM with one item on the agenda, proposed ordinance 10/2023, adjustment to the permanent appropriation. With a little bit of discussion, a motion was made to add it to the agenda tonight and pass as an emergency as recommended by the auditor. Meeting was adjourned at 6:45 PM. That's the end of my report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rookley. Public Works and Economic Development, Mr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Works and Economic Development met this evening at 7 PM, and we had a couple items we were discussing. Was proposed Resolution 8 and proposed Resolution 9. They had to do with rental registration and registration of vacant buildings in our city. We had a nice discussion on it, and we're gonna have another meeting on that at the next regularly scheduled council meeting at 6:30. We have an hour carved out for that. And we're hearing a lot of things that we're gonna get some stuff done on this, I think. So,
All right, thank you, Mr. Alonso. Safety, Health and Service, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. No formal report this evening.
All right, Zoning and Annexation, Mrs. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. President, no report.
Salary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. May has no report.
All right, Mitch's not here for Parks and Cemetery. Special contact, Mr. Rippeth.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have no report tonight.
All right. All right. Now, visitors' comments. The floor is now open to anyone wishing to address council. They should rise, state their name and address, and address all comments to the chair. You have 5 minutes, 5-minute limit. Does anybody wish to speak to council tonight? Need to go to the podium, state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Lori Golick Judy. I live at 1104 Goshen Avenue Southeast, New Philadelphia, Ohio. I know most of you, but many of you don't know that my father audited all of Northeast Ohio schools and county and city offices. Jim Dusenberry, he was a state auditor. I don't know if any of you recognize the name. Maybe not. Okay. I just retired last May from New Philadelphia City Schools. And I first want to give a shout out to Mr. Holland, I believe, safety or health director. Would that be the case, sir?
My committee is the health committee.
Oh, okay. Fabulous, fabulous operation down here that goes highly unnoticed. I got my COVID shot, and the nurse was beyond exceptional. I got my last one from the New Philadelphia firefighters, and she suggested that I move my arm a lot. And instead of 4 days of pain, I only had one. And I called and gave her a shout out for that as well. Very underutilized. I did not realize that it's available to the entire state of Ohio. Marketing is necessary. Okay, the reason I'm here is because I recently lost a brother who lives at 586 Easy Street, Southeast New Philadelphia, Ohio. The water department knows he died. AEP, Dominion, the New Philly Police all know he's dead. I had a dead mower. And Josh put the paper on the front of his door. I was 4 days late. The city ripped out brand new landscaping. It's dead. They blew everything toward the house. I spent 2.5 hours ripping out those tall, pokey things that grow in dry conditions, which we recently had. I called Josh and he told me to file a lawsuit. I don't want to file a lawsuit. I'm here to speak related to Ron McAbeer, who was kind when I spoke to him. He said, "Lori, what can I do for you?" And I said, "Listen, not only did you rip out all of his landscaping, which was brand new, it's dead. You sliced the hose that the water department has chosen to turn off and took out all of his pillars on his back deck. And he's dead. And I was told to file a lawsuit. I'm telling you right now, I stand before you. I'm embarrassed. I'm in the process of buying my home on Easy Street, and guess what? I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna rent it just like the rest of us. Because I know Philly's a rental loop. And I spent thousands of dollars to help Harbor House, to help the homeless shelter, to help the men's home, to help the boys' group home as a teacher at East Elementary, where I retired from during COVID. I found out today that you guys at the health department could have helped us as teachers with those immediate needs during COVID, when we spent thousands of our own dollars to help families and to help children, and I had no idea it was available. I am single. I am a female. And I'm telling you right now, if I was male, I would not have been treated the way I have been treated. I won't even start on the New Philly Police. My father died. I was assured I could be there. I was met by Chief Goodwin and 2 officers and Ann Geib mocking me. I wasn't next to Kim, but I'm his daughter. I was not permitted to see his body, thanks to New Philadelphia Police. On top of that, 2 days later, I went to remove 17 Civil War guns from my brother's pole barn in New Philadelphia, Ohio, that better not get mowed by the city. And I was arrested and put in jail for 5 hours because I violated a protection order. Oh, it was Sharon Dusenberry Johnson who filed it against me. So it wasn't a violation to her, but to the fucking, excuse my language, to the city of I apologize, to the city of New Philadelphia, it was a violation and I was abused.
All right, your 5 minutes is up, Lori.
What can be done about it? I have an attorney. I don't want to bring him.
That's up to you, Lori. I mean, it's your call. I mean, if you talk to Mr. McAbeer, I mean, it's your call to do what you got to do.
So you suggest I file a lawsuit, sir?
No, I didn't say that at all. I said, that's your choice. If you think you've been wronged.
I know I've been wronged, and he has offered to do anything to correct it. Is that still the case, Mr. McAbeer?
We spoke.
Then that means replacing everything that got torn out, replacing all the brand new landscape that I took home and had to water because you guys shut the water off. And I talked to the water department and I said, do not shut that water off. I will pay them. And it was shut off. The grass is dead and I have photo after photo after photo. And I'm telling you right now, if I was not a single female at the age of 58, none of this would have transpired. Specifically, the New Philadelphia Police who abused me. Thank you.
All right, anyone else wishing to address council tonight? Council comments. Anyone in council have comments this evening? If not, we'll move on to our legislative agenda.
Ordinance number 10, 2023, an ordinance by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, amending and adjusting the permanent appropriations ordinance for the year 2023 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
All right, is there any action we're taking on ordinance 10, 2023? Yes, Mr. Rickety.
Mr. President, I ask that we suspend the rules on ordinance 10, 2023.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holland. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklet.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May. Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Rippeth.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Mr. Rickety.
Mr. President, I ask that we pass ordinance 10, 2023 this evening.
Do I have a second? Mr. Holland, thank you. In discussion by the community, administration.
I
Yes.
just had one question related to the cemetery. Has the water been turned off?
Mr. President, she's out of order.
Oh, I
Yes.
apologize. I thought he said any visitor comment.
No, we're past that stage.
Oh,
miss.
I'm sorry.
All right. All right, so on this ordinance 10, 2023, any comments by administration, council, roll call?
Mr. Ricklick?
Yes.
Mr. Holland?
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
She said yes.
Oh, Mrs. Ramos?
Sure she did.
Yes.
Mr. Ribbit?
Yes.
All right, ordinance 10, 2023 has passed.
That concludes legislation for this
All
evening.
right, thank you, Ms. Courtright. All right, any unfinished old business brought before council? Any new business brought before council? Go, Mr. Fisher.
I just wanna say, you mentioned the pickleball, that is fantastic. That, well, I took my kids, we bought pickleball rackets, went down there. One, it's a really fun thing to do, and two, if you go down there at night, that place has got 35, 40 kids
Oh,
down
yeah.
there. And some of them are overflowing on the thing, that's just a great thing for the
Yeah,
city.
young people are catching on to it.
Young people are doing it like crazy.
Yep.
All right. Any new business? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, thank you, Ms. Bullock, for your comments. And I'm certain that someone will get back in touch with
Related to,
your comments.
thank you.
Mr. President, I would move that this meeting of the new Philadelphia City Council be adjourned.
8:21, we are adjourned.